Welcome, traveler. I'm so glad you have found your way here tonight. You've stepped into a space designed for stillness, a place where the grand mysteries of the cosmos are whispered rather than shouted. Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey through the quiet history of everything. It is a story that spans billions of years, yet it begins in a place of absolute, perfect silence. We will follow the path of the very first particles as they gather the birth of the first stars and the long, slow cooling of the world we call home. It is a journey meant to guide you into a deep and restorative sleep, letting the vastness of space make your own worries feel small and distant. As you begin to settle into your pillows and pull the covers close, I invite you to become a permanent part of this quiet corner of the internet. If you find these stories help you find peace, please consider subscribing to the channel or leaving a gentle like on this video. It is a small gesture that helps us continue to share these wonders with you every night, and it lets me know that you're out there resting well. Now, let us take a moment to recenter. No matter what your day was like, that time has passed. This moment belongs only to you and the quiet air around you. Notice the way the mattress supports your weight. Feel the fabric of your sheets against your skin. I want you to focus on your shoulders for a moment. Often, we carry the weight of the world there without realizing it. Let them drop. Let them sink an inch deeper into the bed. Take a slow, steady breath in through your nose, feeling your chest rise like a gentle tide. And now, exhale slowly, letting every bit of tension leave your body with the air. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are ready to listen. Our story begins in a way that is difficult for our busy minds to grasp. We are going to look back further than the oldest stars, further than the first galaxies, to a point before there was a here or a there. We are approaching the boundary between nothing and something. It is the ultimate transition, the moment when the silence of the void began to stir with the very first hints of existence. Imagine, if you can, a state of being so still that even the concept of a second didn't exist yet. We are standing at the edge of the beginning, ready to see how the first threads of our universe were woven from the most profound stillness imaginable. It is a transition from a world of nothing to a world of something, though as we shall see, that nothing was far more than it appeared to be. It was a vast, dark, and silent field of pure potential, waiting for the first breath of time to begin. In our daily lives, we often think of nothing as a simple absence. We think of an empty room, a blank page, or a clear sky. But in the deep, ancient language of physics, the concept of nothing is far more beautiful and complex than that. To truly understand where we came from, we have to imagine a state of being so still that it feels like a heavy, velvet curtain. There is no sound. There is no light. There isn't even a clock ticking because time itself hasn't been born yet. This is the vacuum before the beginning, a vast, dark, and silent expanse that stretches beyond any horizon we could possibly imagine. Yet, scientists tell us that this nothing wasn't truly empty. Instead, it was a quiet field of pure potential. Think of it like the surface of a perfectly still lake in the middle of a windless night. To look at it, you would say nothing is happening. It is flat, dark, and mirror-like. But beneath that surface, there is a deep reservoir of water. The lake has the capacity for a ripple. It has the possibility of a wave. This is what the universe was like before the first spark. It was a field of energy in its most restful state, a quantum silence that held the blueprints for everything that would ever exist. Imagine yourself standing in the center of that vastness. It is a darkness that doesn't feel cold or lonely, but rather it feels like a soft, warm embrace. It is the ultimate peace. In this space, there is no before and no after, only a long, continuous now. Physics suggests that even in this perfect vacuum, there were tiny, invisible flickers, a subtle, microscopic shimmer in the dark. We call this the quantum foam. It is the quietest music imaginable, played on the strings of the universe before the instruments were even built. It is a reminder that even in the most profound emptiness, there is the seed of something magnificent. As you lie there, feeling the quiet of your own room, you can relate to this ancient stillness. Your mind is beginning to clear, moving away from the noise and the light of the day, drifting toward a state of pure, restful potential. Just like that early universe, you are settling into a space where nothing is required of you. You are simply existing in the quiet, a field of potential waiting for tomorrow. It was from this very stillness, this deep and heavy silence, that the first stirrings of energy began to emerge. It wasn't a loud or chaotic event at first. It was more like a soft glow appearing in a dark room or the first hint of warmth on a cool morning. This energy didn't come from somewhere else. It rose up from the field itself, a ripple in the fabric of the nothing that was actually everything. This subtle shift, this tiny shimmering change in the silence, was the first heartbeat of the cosmos. It was the moment the potential began to turn into reality, preparing the way for a spark that would change the nature of existence forever. The energy began to concentrate, gathering itself like a slow-moving tide, preparing to expand outward into the great, waiting dark. Imagine that first heartbeat growing stronger, a soft pulse in the deep quiet of the pre-dawn of existence. We often hear the term Big Bang, and we might naturally picture a great explosion like a firework bursting against the night sky. But the reality of our beginning is much more poetic and far more profound. It wasn't an explosion occurring within space, as if space were a pre-existing room waiting to be filled. Instead, it was the very birth and rapid unfolding of space itself. It was the stretching of the cosmic fabric, an expansion that created the where and the when of everything we have ever known. Think of it not as a blast, but as the most graceful unfolding imaginable. Imagine a soft, infinite silk cloth that was once folded into a point so small it was invisible, and then, in a single moment of grace, it began to spread outward in every direction at once. There was no outside to look in from, because the universe was everything. Every star that would one day twinkle, every mountain that would one day rise, and every person who would ever look up at the moon was tucked inside that initial, singular beginning. At this earliest stage, the entire universe was smaller than a single grain of sand. It is a staggering thought to hold as you drift toward the sleep. that the vastness of the heavens and the depth of the oceans were once concentrated into a speck so microscopic it would be lost on the tip of your finger. But though it was tiny, it was unimaginably brilliant. It was a point of pure concentrated light, hotter than the core of 1,000,000,000,000 suns, shimmering with the weight of all possible futures. It was the ultimate seed, containing the blueprint for every galaxy yet to be born. This tiny speck did not remain still. In a fraction of a second, a span of time so short that the human mind can barely name it, the universe underwent a period of incredible growth. In less than a trillionth of a second, it expanded with a speed that defies our everyday understanding of movement. This was the moment the universe claimed its territory, pushing outward into the dark and creating the vast distances that we now measure in light years. As you breathe in and out, slowly and steadily, try to picture this expansion as a gentle, fluid motion. It is like a drop of gold ink spreading through clear water, or a soft cloud of steam rising and filling a quiet room. The universe was simply making room for itself, creating the stage upon which the entire story of time would be written. In that first trillionth of a second, the universe moved from a state of perfect tiny unity into a vast, stretching something. It was the most important moment in the history of the cosmos, yet it happened in the smallest sliver of time imaginable, setting the foundation for the long, slow cooling that would eventually allow the first light to shine. In those first fleeting moments after the expansion began, the universe was a place of pure, unadulterated potential. It is difficult for us to imagine a world without stuff, without the solid ground beneath us, or the air we pull into our lungs. But at the very beginning, there were no objects at all. There were no atoms, no molecules, and certainly no stars. The universe was simply too hot for matter to exist. It was a realm of pure, vibrating energy, a shimmering sea of light that filled every newly created inch of space. Think of this energy not as a chaotic fire, but as a beautiful, high-frequency song. Everything that would ever be, every mountain range, every drop of rain, every heartbeat was present in that song, but only as a vibration. It was a state of perfect, radiant simplicity. If you could have looked upon it, you would have seen nothing but a blinding, beautiful glow, a golden fog of possibility that stretched out in every direction. At this stage, the universe was so dense and so energetic that light itself couldn't even move in straight lines. It was a thick, glowing soup of pure power. As you lie here now, in the quiet of your room, I want you to imagine that ancient warmth. Let it be a soft, comforting light that wraps around you like a cocoon. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest as you breathe, and imagine that each breath is a part of that same cosmic rhythm. Just as the early universe was filled with a vibrant, glowing heat, you can feel a sense of warmth spreading through your body. From the tips of your toes up to your shoulders, let your muscles soften. Let the tension in your urja dissolve, much like the way the intense heat of the early universe dissolved the boundaries between all things. You are safe, you are warm, and you are part of this unfolding story. As the seconds slowly ticked by, though time still moved in ways we would find strange, the universe continued its steady, silent expansion. And as it grew, it began to change. There is a simple rule in our universe. When things expand and take up more space, they begin to cool. The frantic high-energy vibrations of that initial glow started to slow down. The song of the universe began to shift from a high energetic trill to a deeper, more resonant bass. Imagine a vast, sun-drenched field on a late summer afternoon. As the sun begins to set and the shadows lengthen, the intense heat of the day starts to lift, replaced by a cool, gentle breeze that settles over the grass. This is what was happening to the cosmos. The raw energy was losing its wild, restless edge. It was becoming calmer, more settled. The universe was no longer a tiny, frantic point of heat. It was becoming a vast, cooling expanse, preparing itself for the very first breath of physical reality. This cooling was the essential bridge between nothing and something. Without this slowing down, the energy would have stayed as light forever, never gathering itself into the shapes and forms we know today. But the universe is patient. It allowed the heat to dissipate, the vibrations to lengthen, and the frantic dance of energy to find a more measured pace. We are approaching the moment when the first shadows of substance began to flicker into existence. The moment when energy, for the first time, began to remember how to be. As the temperature dropped, the stage was set for the most famous equation in history to take effect, turning that soft, glowing light into the very first building blocks of our world. In this cooling stillness, a profound law of nature began to manifest. You may have heard it spoken as a simple sequence of letters and numbers. E equals mc squared. But in the quiet cradle of the early universe, this wasn't just a formula on a chalkboard. It was the very breath of creation. Albert Einstein's famous equation reveals a simple, beautiful truth. Energy and matter are really just two different versions of the same thing. They are like two sides of a soft, silken ribbon. One side is the invisible, vibrating energy we've been imagining, and the other is the physical substance that makes up the world we know. As the universe continued to expand and the temperature dropped, the frantic energy began to undergo a transformation. Imagine you are standing in a warm, misty room, perhaps after a long, relaxing bath. The air is thick with invisible steam, swirling and warm. But as that steam touches a cool window pane, it slows down. It loses its wild, airy freedom and gathers together bead by bead until it becomes a shimmering drop of water. This is a perfect way to visualize what was happening billions of years ago. The universe was cooling, and the steam of pure radiant energy was beginning to condense into the droplets of physical matter. It is a strange and wonderful thought to consider that everything you see around you, the heavy wood of a table, the soft fabric of your blanket, even the very air you breathe, was once nothing more than light and heat. Under the influence of that cooling cosmos, energy began to freeze into substance. It was as if the universe were a vast ocean of light that was slowly, gently beginning to form the very first crystals of ice. This process wasn't loud or violent. It was a subtle shift, a settling of the cosmic rhythm. The energy didn't just disappear, it simply changed its shape. It became more concentrated, more tangible. It was gathering itself into the smallest, most fundamental units of reality. We are witnessing the birth of stuff, the moment when the abstract became concrete. As you breathe in deeply, feel the weight of your own body against the mattress. That weight, that sense of being solid and present, is a direct result of this ancient transformation. You are made of energy that learned how to be still. You are the M in that famous equation, a collection of mass that was once a vibrant part of that initial glowing spark. The universe was no longer just a void filled with light. It was becoming a workshop, and in this workshop, the very first tiniest pieces of the puzzle were starting to flicker into existence. They were so small they didn't even have a name yet, but they were the foundation for everything that would ever follow. These first flickers of matter were the messengers of the physical world, the very first inhabitants of the vast cooling space. And as they appeared, they began to look for one another, driven by a deep, invisible need to connect and build something new. We are moving now from the era of pure light into the era of the particle, where the smallest building blocks of life began their first quiet dance. In this cooling, quiet workshop of the early universe, the very first inhabitants began to emerge. These weren't the stars or planets we know today, nor were they even the atoms that make up your hand or the pillow beneath your head. These were the smallest, most fundamental building blocks of existence, the quarks and the gluons. If you could shrink down, smaller than a cell, smaller than an atom, past the electrons and deep into the heart of matter, you would find these tiny, shimmering points. Quarks are the smallest pieces of stuff we have ever discovered. They are the true originals. But quarks have a very peculiar and rather lovely quality. They are incredibly social. In the entire history of the universe, a quark has almost never been seen alone. They have a deep, restless need to be part of a group, to find a partner, to belong to something larger than themselves. Imagine these tiny particles as restless travelers in a vast, dark hall. They don't want to wander the emptiness by themselves. They are constantly reaching out, searching for others like them. When a quark finds another, or perhaps two others, they link together in a bond that is almost impossible to break. They are the ultimate team players, and accompanying them are the gluons. If the quarks are the building blocks, the gluons are the messengers, flitting back and forth between them. Their very name comes from the word glue, and that is exactly what they provide. They are the tiny, invisible threads that weave the quarks together, ensuring that they are never truly solitary. In those first few moments of the universe's life, the space was filled with this frantic, tiny dance. Millions upon millions of quarks and gluons were swirling in a hot, dense soup, bumping into one another, testing their connections, and beginning to settle into their first arrangements. It was a time of great seeking. Think about that for a moment as you lie there, feeling the stillness of your room. At the very foundation of everything you are, there is this ancient social energy. Your body is built on a foundation of togetherness. The tiny pieces that make you you were born with an instinct to find one another, to hold on, and to stay together. As the universe continued to expand and the temperature dropped just a little more, these social gatherings of quarks began to grow more stable. They were no longer just drifting. They were starting to form the first permanent structures of the cosmos. The restless dance was beginning to find a rhythm, a steady beat that would eventually lead to the creation of everything we see. These tiny pieces were finding their places, preparing to build the very first hearts of the atoms that would one day become the stars, the earth, and the very breath in your lungs. The era of the individual particle was fading, and the era of the family, the era of the atom, was just beginning to dawn. These tiny partners were about to be locked together by a force so powerful it would define the very stability of the universe. In the quiet, cooling cradle of the early universe, a new kind of strength began to manifest. It is a force so profound and so essential that scientists simply call it the strong force. If we think of the universe as a vast, intricate tapestry, the strong force is the thread that keeps the entire fabric from unraveling. It is the invisible architecture of existence, the ultimate cosmic glue that ensures the universe doesn't simply drift apart into a haze of disconnected, ghostly specks. While gravity is the force we feel pulling us toward the Earth, and the force that keeps the planets in their steady orbits, the strong force works on a scale so small it is almost impossible to imagine. Yet, its power is what allows everything else to exist. It is millions of times stronger than the forces that hold a magnet to your refrigerator, acting like a silent, unbreakable vow between the smallest pieces of matter. Imagine, if you will, the tiniest of threads, thinner than a beam of light, weaving between those social quarks we spoke of. These threads are the gluons, those busy messengers of this incredible force. They don't just sit there. They are constantly moving, pulsing with an energy that says, "Stay, do not let go." This force is the reason why, as you lie there in the stillness, your pillow feels solid beneath your head, and the air feels real as it enters your lungs. It is the fundamental yes of the physical world, a commitment made by nature itself to hold things together, to create substance out of the void. Without this silent, powerful grip, the very atoms in your body would dissolve into a cloud of energy, and the stars would never have found the strength to shine. As the universe continued its slow, graceful expansion, the temperature dropped just enough for this force to take a firm, permanent hold. The frantic, hot dance of the quarks began to settle into a steady, reliable rhythm. They were no longer just passing each other in the dark. They were being pulled into tight, unbreakable clusters, like old friends finally coming home to rest. These clusters are the very first building blocks of matter as we know it. They are beyond anchors of the physical world. There is a deep sense of peace in the way this force operates. It doesn't shout, it doesn't struggle. It simply is. It is a constant, unwavering presence at the heart of every single atom in your body, every cell, every drop of water, every breath is anchored by this silent, powerful bond. It is a reminder that even at the most basic level of our existence, there is a profound stability. You are held together by a force that has not wavered for nearly 14 billion years. It is a strength you can trust, a foundation that allows you to let go of the day and drift into sleep, knowing that the very fabric of your being is secure, solid, and unchanging. In this cooling era, the restless energy of the Big Bang was finally being harnessed. The quarks, once wild and free, were now being gathered into the first stable structures of the cosmos. These groups of three were becoming something new, something that would eventually form the very heart of everything we see. The most famous of these gatherings, the one that would go on to light up the entire sky and fill the oceans of the world, was just beginning to take shape. This was the birth of the proton, a tiny sturdy heart of light and energy held in an eternal embrace by the strongest force in the universe. It was the first true step toward building a home in the stars. This tiny cluster, this proton, is a masterpiece of cosmic architecture. It is the very first stable structure to emerge from the cooling embers of the early universe. Within its minuscule boundaries, those three quarks we spoke of are locked in a tight, eternal embrace. They do not merely sit side by side, they are intertwined in a dance so intimate and so strong that they can never be pulled apart. This is the ultimate commitment of the physical world. In the heart of every proton, there is a constant, rhythmic exchange of energy, a silent promise that this structure will endure, perhaps forever. Scientists believe that protons are incredibly long-lived, existing for timescales so vast they are almost impossible for us to imagine. It is a comforting thought to realize that the very substance of your body is built upon something so remarkably permanent and reliable. As the universe continued to stretch and sigh, these protons became the defining feature of the cosmos. A single proton, standing alone, forms the heart of a hydrogen atom, the simplest, lightest, and most abundant element in existence. Hydrogen is the primal ancestor of everything else. It is the fuel that would one day ignite the first stars, and it is the foundation of the water that flows through our world today. When you think of a vast blue ocean or a gentle summer rain, you are really thinking of the legacy of these ancient protons. They are the simplest expression of matter, a single point of positive energy around which the rest of the universe would eventually be built. There is an elegance in this simplicity, a reminder that the most complex things in our lives, from the branching of a tree to the neural pathways of your mind, began with this one, solitary, sturdy particle. This proton is like a small, warm sun at the center of a tiny solar system. It is a beacon of stability in a universe that was still very young and very chaotic. Because of its positive charge, it acts as a gentle magnet, a focal point for the forces of nature to gather around. You can imagine it as a soft, glowing light in the darkness, a steady pulse of being that refuses to fade. Almost every single atom in your body contains these same protons that were forged in those first few minutes of time. They have traveled across billions of light years and through the hearts of countless stars to be here with you tonight. They are the quiet, unchanging witnesses to the entire history of the universe, and they are resting now, just as you are. But as the universe continued its slow transformation, the proton was joined by a partner. While the proton is a bright, active heart of energy, it eventually found a companion to help balance the scales of the growing atomic world. This new arrival was the neutron. If the proton is the heart, the neutron is the steady, silent anchor. It is slightly heavier, a bit more reserved, and it carries no electrical charge at all. It is neutral, peaceful, and still. Together, the proton and the neutron would begin to form the nucleus, the tiny, dense core that sits at the center of every atom in the world around you. This partnership between the active proton and the quiet neutron is what allows the universe to grow more complex, more varied, and more stable. It is the beginning of a balance that would one day make life itself possible. In the stillness of the cooling cosmos, these two particles were finding their place, preparing to build the foundations of a world they could not yet see. The neutron is the quiet mediator of the atomic world. While protons carry a positive charge that can sometimes push other protons away, the neutron has no charge at all. It is neutral, calm, and steady. In the tiny, crowded center of an atom, the neutron acts as a buffer, a gentle presence that allows protons to sit side by side without conflict. You can think of it as the peacekeeper of the cosmos. Without this silent partner, the complex elements that make up our world, the oxygen we breathe, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our very cells, could never have formed. The neutron provides the necessary weight and the quiet strength to hold everything together. It is a reminder that sometimes the most important role is not to lead or to push, but simply to be a stable, grounding presence. As you lie there, let yourself feel that same sense of stability. Like the neutron at the heart of an atom, you are grounded and secure. There is a perfect balance in the way these tiny particles are constructed, a symmetry that has persisted for billions of years. This balance is within you too. Every cell in your body is built upon this foundation of quiet, steady atoms. You don't need to do anything to maintain this harmony. It is simply the nature of the universe. Your breath flows in and out, your heart beats with a rhythmic, ancient pulse, and the atoms that make you who you are remain perfectly balanced, perfectly still. Just as the neutron holds the center of the atom in a state of eternal peace, you can allow yourself to sink into the support of your bed, knowing that at your very core, everything is in its right place. At this stage in the story of everything, the universe was still incredibly young, only a few minutes old. It was not yet the vast, empty space we see when we look up at the night sky. Instead, it was more like a thick, glowing, incredibly hot soup. This cosmic soup was a dense mixture of protons, neutrons, and light, all swirling together in a brilliant, golden haze. It was a time of immense energy and movement, yet within that movement, there was a profound sense of unity. Everything was connected, touching, and part of one singular unfolding event. There were no stars yet, no planets, and no galaxies, just this radiant, liquid-like state of being. Imagine being cradled in this warmth. The universe was small enough and dense enough that every part of it was in constant contact with every other part. It was a period of intense creation, where the first simple nuclei, mostly hydrogen and helium, were being forged in the heat. This soup was so thick and so bright that light itself couldn't travel very far before bumping into a particle. It was a world of soft, diffused light, like a thick fog illuminated by a distant sun. It was a time of waiting, a time of preparation, as the universe slowly expanded and began the long, patient process of cooling down. Even in this high-energy state, there was a rhythm to the chaos, a slow transition toward the order and beauty that was yet to come. The universe was exhaling, expanding and settling into its new form, preparing for the moment when the light would finally be set free. For the next several 100,000 years, the universe remained in this state, a vast, glowing, opaque sea known as plasma. It was a time of incredible density and brilliance, a period where the entire cosmos was a thick, radiant fog. If you could have been there, you wouldn't have seen the stars or the deep, dark voids of space we know today. Instead, you would have been enveloped by a soft, uniform glow that filled every corner of existence. It was a world without shadows, a world where light was a prisoner of its own energy, unable to break free from the crowd of particles. Think of a morning where the mist is so heavy you can barely see a few feet in front of you. In that mist, the tiny droplets of water catch the light and scatter it, creating a soft white wall of color. The early universe was much like that, but instead of water droplets, it was filled with free-roaming electrons and protons wandering through space. Light, in the form of tiny particles called photons, tried to travel across the cosmos, but it couldn't go far. Every time a photon attempted to move in a straight line, it would almost immediately bump into a busy, wandering electron and be knocked off course. It was a cosmic game of pinball, with light bouncing endlessly back and forth, trapped in a beautiful glowing cage. Because the light was constantly being scattered, the universe was opaque. You couldn't see through it any more than you can see through a thick piece of frosted glass. It was like being inside a giant glowing sun that stretched out forever. Everything was immediate, everything was present, and everything was still very, very warm. But as the centuries turned into millennia, a quiet, inevitable change was beginning to take place. The universe was continuing to expand, stretching its fabric out into the surrounding emptiness. And as it stretched, it began to lose its intense, biting heat. This cooling was slow and steady, like the embers of a fire fading into a soft, manageable glow. The universe was not in a hurry. It was drifting through a long, patient era of transition, a time of waiting and settling. As the temperature dropped, the frantic dance of the particles began to lose its intensity. The protons and electrons, which had been moving with such violent energy that they could never stay together, were starting to slow down. They were like tired travelers at the end of a long journey, their movements becoming heavier and more rhythmic. As you lie here, imagine this cooling as a gentle, soothing breeze passing over a warm landscape. Feel the heat of the day fading away, replaced by a calm, quiet stillness. The universe was preparing for a great clearing, a moment when the fog would finally lift and the very first true atoms would be allowed to form. We are currently in that long, peaceful wait, a time of anticipation where the foundations for everything we know are being laid in the dark, glowing warmth of the plasma. The universe was waiting for a specific threshold, a perfect temperature where the energy of motion would finally be balanced by the energy of attraction. It was a delicate cosmic equilibrium, a moment of poise. And as we wait for that cooling to reach its peak, we can find comfort in the slow, rhythmic pace of the cosmos. There is no need to rush. The universe took thousands upon thousands of years to reach this point, moving with a deep, unbothered patience. We are simply following that same slow path, drifting toward a state of perfect, quiet clarity, waiting for the light to finally find its way home. In this vast, cooling glow, we begin to notice the smallest, most nimble players in our cosmic story. These are the electrons. If the protons we spoke of earlier are the sturdy, heavy anchors of matter, the electrons are their light, energetic counterparts. They are incredibly tiny, so small and light that they are almost weightless in comparison to the heart of an atom. If a proton were the size of a large, heavy stone, an electron would be like a single drifting grain of pollen. Yet, despite their small size, they carry a profound and vital power, a negative electric charge. In the language of the universe, this charge is like a silent, invisible reaching out. It is a fundamental law of nature that opposites attract. And so, these negative electrons feel a deep, constant pull toward the positive hearts of the protons. It is a cosmic longing for balance, a desire to find a partner and settle into a state of rest. But for a very long time, the universe was simply too energetic for this union to occur. Imagine the early universe as a grand, crowded ballroom. The protons are standing still, waiting, while the electrons are like dancers, moving with such incredible speed and frantic energy that they cannot stop. They feel the tug of the protons as they fly past. They feel that magnetic invitation to stay, to circle, to find a home, but their own momentum is too great. They are moving at thousands of miles per second, zigzagging through the hot, dense plasma. Every time an electron gets close to a proton, the sheer heat of the environment kicks it away again. It was a time of restless, unceasing motion, a dance that never ended and never slowed. As you breathe in and out, imagine that frantic motion beginning to tire. The universe is continuing its patient expansion, stretching out the space between particles. And as it stretches, it continues to cool. The fever of the early cosmos is finally breaking. The frantic, jagged movements of the electrons are beginning to smooth out. They are losing their edge, their speed, and their wildness. Think of this cooling as a transition from a roaring, chaotic wind to a gentle, steady breeze. The electrons are still moving, but they are no longer running away from their destiny. They are beginning to drift, their paths becoming more curved, more influenced by the gentle pull of the protons they once ignored. The invisible threads of electromagnetism are starting to tighten like soft, silken cords drawing two things together. We are approaching a miraculous threshold in history. The universe is reaching a specific, perfect temperature, a point where the energy of heat is no longer strong enough to break the bonds of attraction. It is a moment of cosmic poise, where the frantic chaos of the beginning meets the structured peace of the future. The electrons are slowing down just enough to be caught. They are prepared to stop their lonely wandering and finally settle into the very first orbits, creating the first stable structures the universe has ever known. This long-awaited capture is the quiet prelude to the birth of everything we can see and touch today. The stage is set, the dancers are slowing, and the light is almost ready to be set free. And then, in a moment of quiet perfection, the threshold was crossed. The universe had cooled to to about 3,000 degrees, still incredibly hot by our standards, but for the early cosmos, it was a gentle, cooling twilight. This era is known to science as recombination. It is a word that sounds technical, but it describes a process that was deeply peaceful. It was the moment the restless, wandering electrons finally felt the invitation of the protons, and instead of rushing past, they allowed themselves to be caught. They fell into stable rhythmic orbits, circling the protons in a delicate, eternal dance. Imagine the satisfaction of a puzzle piece finally clicking into place after a long search. As each electron settled into its home around a proton, the very first neutral atoms were born. These were atoms of hydrogen, the simplest and most elegant of all the elements. A single proton at the center, a single electron drifting in a soft cloud around it. In that span of time, the universe transformed from a chaotic sea of charged particles into a vast, silent ocean of hydrogen gas. Hydrogen is the primary building block of everything we know. It is the lightest element, the most humble, and yet it is the most abundant. Even today, billions of years later, hydrogen makes up about 3/4 of all the visible matter in the entire universe. It is the stuff of stars, the heart of water, and a fundamental part of the very cells that make up your body. As you lie there, feel the ancient heritage of these atoms within you. The hydrogen in the water in your veins, the hydrogen that helps hold your DNA together. These atoms found their first partners in that quiet era of recombination billions of years ago. But the formation of these atoms did more than just create matter. It changed the very nature of space itself. Before this moment, the universe was like a thick, glowing fog. Because the electrons were flying around freely, they acted like tiny mirrors, constantly reflecting and scattering every photon of light. Light couldn't travel more than a tiny distance before bumping into a particle and being sent in another direction. The universe was opaque, a milky, luminous soup where nothing could be seen and no light could escape. As the electrons were pulled into their orbits, the fog began to lift. The space between the new atoms suddenly became empty and clear. It was as if a heavy, heavy curtain had been drawn back, or a thick morning mist had finally evaporated under the warmth of a rising sun. For the first time since the beginning of time, the universe became transparent. Imagine standing in a vast, dark forest where the air is suddenly cleansed of smoke. Suddenly the view opens up. There is a profound sense of clarity and room to breathe. The universe was no longer a crowded, cluttered space. It was an open expanse, a theater waiting for its first performance. The paths were now open. The obstacles were gone. And in this new crystal-clear cosmos, something extraordinary was about to happen. The light that had been trapped for hundreds of thousands of years, bouncing restlessly from particle to particle, was finally, movably and gloriously free to fly. It was ready to begin a journey across the void, a journey that continues even now, reaching across the eons to tell us the story of how it all began. With the fog finally gone, the universe experienced its first great sunrise, though there was no sun yet to be seen. Instead, the entire cosmos was filled with a brilliant uniform glow. This was the moment of last scattering, the very last time those ancient photons bumped into an electron before finding an open path through the clear, new space. For the first time since the beginning of everything, light was free. It surged forward in every direction at once, a golden flood of energy racing across the infant universe. Imagine that first light as a great warm exhale. It traveled through the vastness, carrying with it the map of everything that had happened until that point. And the most incredible part of this story is that this light never truly left us. It didn't simply vanish into the past. It stayed, stretching and cooling as the universe itself grew larger. Today, we call this light the cosmic microwave background, or the CMB. It is the oldest thing we can ever see, a faint, ghostly afterglow of the creation of the world. Even now, as you lie there in the quiet of your room, that ancient light is all around you. It is a soft, invisible hum that permeates every inch of space, from the furthest reaches of the galaxy to the very pillow beneath your head. If our eyes could see in the microwave spectrum, the night sky wouldn't be black. It would glow with a steady, gentle warmth, a reminder of the universe's bright and fiery beginning. It is the ultimate background noise, a cosmic lullaby that has been playing for nearly 14 billion years. It is a whisper from the deep past, telling us that we are part of a story that is vast, ancient, and continuous. But as that first brilliant flash of light traveled onward, stretching into longer and cooler wavelengths, it left the universe in a strange and peaceful state. The initial heat of the Big Bang was fading. The glow was dimming. And because the first stars had not yet been born, the universe began to slip into a period of profound silence and shadow. This era is known to scientists as the cosmic dark ages. Try to visualize this period of time. There were no galaxies, no suns, and no planets. There was only a vast, clear expanse of space filled with a thin, cold mist of hydrogen and helium atoms. It was a darkness more complete than any night we can imagine on Earth. A velvety, deep, and absolute blackness. There was no one to see it, and nothing to provide a spark of light. It was a time of waiting. For millions of years, the universe remained in this state of quietude. It was a long, cosmic sleep. The atoms of gas drifted slowly through the void, spread out so thinly that they barely ever touched. But even in this deep, dark silence, something was moving. Something invisible was working behind the scenes, patiently pulling at the threads of the universe. In the absence of light, a different kind of power was beginning to assert itself, gathering the scattered atoms of gas and preparing the stage for the next great transformation. The darkness was not empty. It was full of potential, a quiet nursery where the very first seeds of the stars were starting to take root in the shadows. This period of the cosmic dark ages lasted for an immense stretch of time, somewhere between 100 million and 200 million years. To our human minds, a century feels like an entire lifetime, but in the long memory of the universe, these millions of years were like a single, quiet night of rest. During this era, there were no suns to rise or set, no moons to wax or wane, and no stars to twinkle in the distance. If you were to float in the middle of space during this time, you would see nothing but a perfect velvety blackness in every direction. The universe was expanding, growing larger and cooler with every passing moment. The primordial gas, mostly hydrogen, with a small amount of helium, drifted through this expanding void like a very thin, ghostly mist. These atoms were the only things that existed, spaced so far apart that they rarely ever brushed against one another. It was a time of profound simplicity. The chaotic, fiery energy of the beginning had settled into a long, cold hush. As you lie there now, try to visualize that deep, peaceful silence of the early cosmos. Imagine a space so vast and so dark that it feels like a soft, heavy blanket. There is no sound, for there is no air to carry it. There is no heat, for there are no fires burning. There is only the gentle, rhythmic expansion of space itself. Let your own surroundings fade away for a moment and replace them with this ancient stillness. Feel the weight of your body sinking into your mattress, just as the atoms of the early universe drifted through the weightless dark. There is no hurry here. There is nowhere to be, and nothing that needs to be done. You are simply existing in a moment of perfect, undisturbed quiet. But even in this absolute darkness, the universe was not truly empty, and it was certainly not idle. Within the vast clouds of drifting hydrogen gas, there were very slight differences in density. In some places, the gas was just a tiny bit thicker than in others. These were not massive walls of matter, but subtle ripples, almost like the faint patterns left in the sand by a receding tide. And it was within these subtle ripples that an invisible power began to make itself known. This power is gravity. We often think of gravity as a heavy, grounding force that keeps our feet on the earth. But in the early universe, gravity was the great, patient architect of the shadows. Gravity is a unique force because it never turns off. It is always reaching out, always searching for matter to pull toward itself. It doesn't matter how small an atom is. Gravity finds it and whispers to it, nudging it toward its neighbors. In the deep cold of the Dark Ages, gravity began its long, slow work. It was not a sudden event, but a gradual gathering. In the areas where the hydrogen gas was slightly denser, the pull of gravity was slightly stronger. Very slowly, over thousands and then millions of years, these regions began to draw in more and more atoms from the surrounding void. It was a process of gentle persuasion. One atom would find another, and together their combined gravity would reach out for a third. This was the beginning of the great cosmic assembly. Even though the universe was still dark, it was no longer uniform. The fog of the early cosmos was beginning to clump together, forming vast, invisible structures that would one day become the foundations of everything we know. Gravity was weaving the scattered threads of the universe back us together, creating pockets of potential in the heart of the night. The silence was still there, but beneath it, a new energy was building, a quiet, focused pressure that was preparing to end the darkness forever. Gravity is perhaps the most patient force in existence. It does not shout. It does not rush. It simply waits, its invisible hands reaching out across the vast, cold distances of the early universe. In those long eons of the Dark Ages, gravity was the only thing moving. While the universe continued to expand, growing larger and thinner, gravity was doing the opposite. It was drawing things together bit by bit, atom by atom. Think of the patience required for such a task. A single atom of hydrogen is incredibly light, almost weightless. Its gravitational pull is so small, it is nearly impossible to measure. And yet, gravity never gives up. It found one atom and nudged it toward another. Then it found a third. Over millions of years, these small gatherings grew into vast, drifting clouds of gas. If the universe had been perfectly smooth, if every atom had been exactly the same distance from every other atom, gravity would have had nothing to grip onto. The universe would have remained a cold, uniform mist forever. But the universe was not perfectly smooth. It had those tiny ripples we spoke of, subtle variations in the density of the gas. These ripples were the seeds of everything we see today. They were the original blueprints for every galaxy, every planet, and every living soul. As you lie there, feeling the steady, familiar pull of the earth beneath you, try to imagine that same force working in the total silence of the deep past. There was no sun to warm these clouds, no moon to reflect light. There was only the slow, rhythmic accumulation of matter. As these clouds of hydrogen grew larger, they became more powerful. Their gravity intensified, pulling in gas from further and further away. The clouds began to change. What was once a thin, ghostly mist began to pack together. The centers of these clouds became dense and heavy, and as gravity squeezed the atoms closer and closer together, something new began to happen. When you squeeze something, it creates friction, and friction creates heat. Deep in the heart of these dark, cold clouds, the temperature began to rise. It was a very slow warming, a gentle stirring in the womb of the cosmos. For millions of years, the universe had been cooling down, but now, in these specific pockets of space, the trend was reversing. The gas was becoming hot. It was becoming pressurized. The atoms were no longer drifting aimlessly. They were being crushed together by the sheer weight of the gas above them. The universe was preparing for its first great transformation. The long, silent night of the Dark Ages was reaching its peak. Within these massive, swirling nurseries of gas, the pressure was reaching a breaking point. It was as if the universe were holding its breath, waiting for the pressure to become so intense that the darkness would finally have to give way. The stage was set, the fuel was gathered, and the very first stars were about to wake up. And then, in the heart of the most massive cloud, the darkness finally broke. Imagine the very first spark of light in the history of everything. It wasn't a sudden harsh flash that would hurt the eyes, but a slow blooming warmth, a soft golden glow that began to push back the shadows of the long cold night. This was the moment of the cosmic dawn, the birth of the very first stars. These ancient stars were different from the ones we see in our night sky today. They were the ancestors of all light, the first titans of the cosmos. Because the universe was still so young, these stars were made of the simplest, purest materials imaginable. There was no dust, no rocky debris, and no complex metals. There were only the two original elements, hydrogen and a small amount of helium. They were pristine, glowing spheres of gas, shimmering with a clarity that we can only dream of now. In those early days, everything was on a much grander scale. Because there were no other elements to interfere with their formation, these first stars grew to be incredibly massive. If you can, picture our own sun, which is already so vast that it could hold over 1,000,000 Earths inside it. Now, try to imagine a star that is 100 times larger than our sun, or even 1,000 times larger. These were the giants that first populated the void. They were lonely beacons separated by vast distances, but their presence changed the universe forever. As these first stars ignited one by one, they brought a gentle end to the era we call the Dark Ages. For millions of years, the universe had been a silent, lightless place, a vast ocean of drifting gas. But now, the first ripples of light began to travel across the emptiness. The darkness was no longer absolute. If you could have stood in the silence of that era, you would have seen a sky beginning to fill with a soft, stellar glow, a tapestry of light being woven for the very first time. But the beauty of their light was only half the story. To truly understand how these stars were able to shine, we have to travel deep inside them, moving past the layers of glowing gas and into the very center. As you settle deeper into your pillows, imagine moving toward the core of one of these great ancient suns. As we go deeper, the environment changes. The gentle glow of the surface gives way to an environment of incredible intensity. Here, in the heart of the star, gravity has reached its peak. The weight of the entire star, all those billions of tons of hydrogen, is pressing inward toward the center. This pressure is so immense that it begins to overcome the natural barriers between atoms. In the cold vacuum of space, atoms prefer to keep their distance, but here they are packed so tightly together that they have no choice but to touch. The core becomes a place of steady, rhythmic crushing, where the very building blocks of matter are squeezed with a force that is almost impossible to imagine. It is in this high-pressure sanctuary that the universe begins its next great work, or turning simple gas into the energy that sustains all life. Within this silent, pressurized sanctuary, the phenomenon we call nuclear fusion begins to take place. It is a process of incredible intimacy, where the very foundations of matter are brought together in a way that changes them forever. Imagine those tiny hydrogen nuclei, those lone protons we spoke of earlier, drifting in the immense weight of the star's core. Under normal circumstances, these particles are like magnets of the same polarity. They naturally push away from one another, preferring to maintain their own space. But here, the gravity of the star is so persistent, so overwhelming, that it simply will not allow them to stay apart. It gently but firmly nudges them closer and closer, overcoming their resistance until they have no choice but to touch. Take a moment to let your own breath settle, matching the slow, steady pace of this cosmic transformation. Feel the stillness in your own space as we contemplate the stillness at the center of a star. When these atoms finally meet, something miraculous happens. They don't just bump into each other, they fuse. They melt into one another, becoming something entirely new. In this moment of union, a tiny fraction of their mass is transformed. It isn't lost, but rather liberated, changing its form from solid matter into pure, radiant energy. This is the secret behind the salt golden light of every star you see in the night sky. Each flicker of light is the result of millions of these tiny embraces happening every single second, deep within the heart of a sun. This energy doesn't stay trapped in the dark core. It begins a long, slow journey outward, radiating through the layers of the star until it reaches the surface and spills out into the cold vacuum of space as gentle warmth and light. As these hydrogen atoms unite, they create a new, slightly heavier element, helium. If hydrogen is the simplest note in the cosmic song, helium is the second, adding a new layer of complexity to the universe's composition. This process is the ultimate form of alchemy, turning the most basic gas into a source of infinite power. As the hydrogen is used up, the core of the star slowly begins to fill with this new helium, like sand settling at the bottom of an hourglass. It is a steady, rhythmic transformation that provides the star with the outward pressure it needs to stay balanced, pushing back against the weight of gravity in a perfect, silent equilibrium. This balance allows the star to shine steadily for millions, sometimes billions of years, providing a reliable source of light in a once dark cosmos. We are witnessing the birth of variety, the very first step in a journey that will eventually lead to the creation of everything we know. The simplicity of the early universe is beginning to give way to something more structured, more stable, and more enduring. As the first stars continue their quiet work, the hydrogen that once drifted aimlessly is now being gathered and transformed, pulse by pulse, into the second element of the periodic table. This transition from 1 to 2, from hydrogen to helium, marks a turning point in history. It is the beginning of a sequence that will eventually populate the universe with all the materials needed for planets, for oceans, and for life itself. But for now, in the quiet of these ancient cores, it is enough to simply observe the birth of helium and the steady, comforting glow it helps to create. Helium is the second simplest element in the entire universe, a quiet and elegant byproduct of the sun's immense power. While hydrogen is the raw, energetic fuel of the cosmos, helium is the result of that energy finding a new, stable form. Its name comes from the Greek word helios, meaning the sun, because for a long time, we didn't even know it existed here on Earth. We could only see its signature in the light reaching us from our own star. It is an element born in the most intense heat imaginable, yet it possesses a character that is remarkably calm and unchanging. In the world of chemistry, helium is known as a noble gas. This means it is incredibly stable. While other elements are constantly looking for partners, trying to bond and react and change into something else, helium is content to be exactly what it is. It doesn't burn, it doesn't rust, and it rarely interacts with the world around it. It is solitary and peaceful, drifting through the universe with a sense of quiet independence. You might recognize it as the gas that allows a balloon to defy gravity and float toward the ceiling, or the substance that makes your voice sound light and ethereal. But in the grand story of the cosmos, helium serves a much deeper purpose. It is the storehouse of a star's history, a physical record of every hydrogen atom that has ever fused in its core. As a star continues to shine, its core slowly transforms. What was once a vast cloud of restless hydrogen becomes a concentrated heart of helium. This helium is heavier and denser, settling at the very center of the star, like a warm, glowing anchor. It doesn't participate in the fusion process right away. Instead, it waits. It acts as a foundation, a sturdy base that supports the layers of gas pressing down from above. This stability is what allows a star like our Sun to live for billions of years, providing a steady, reliable source of warmth for any planets that might be orbiting nearby. It is a beautiful irony that such a light, floaty gas is responsible for the heavy lifting required to keep a star balanced against the crushing force of its own gravity. Think of helium as a gentle carrier of the Sun's legacy. It is the silent partner in the dance of light. While we feel the heat and see the brightness of the Sun's surface, it is the accumulation of helium deep within that dictates the star's rhythm and its ultimate fate. Every helium atom in existence today was forged in that same pressurized crucible, carrying within it the memory of a star's life. It is a bridge between the simplicity of the early universe and the complexity of the world we see today. As the eons pass and the star uses up more of its hydrogen, the pressure at the center begins to change once more. The helium heart grows larger and hotter, preparing for the next chapter of its journey. The star is no longer just a source of light. It is becoming a cosmic kitchen, getting ready to cook something even more intricate. The stability of helium provides the perfect environment for the next great leap in the evolution of matter. We are moving away from the basic building blocks and toward the elements that make life possible. Deep within the aging star, the helium atoms will soon begin a new dance, coming together in groups of 3 to create something that will eventually form the very basis of your own being, the element carbon. But for now, let yourself rest in the stability of the helium heart, a place of balance, light, and enduring peace. As the star ages, its helium heart grows denser and hotter, reaching temperatures that are difficult for the human mind to even conceive. In this intense glowing pressure, a new and miraculous transformation begins to take place. The helium atoms, which have been resting so stably at the core, are pushed into a closer, more intimate dance. This is a rare and delicate moment in the life of a star, a process where 3 helium atoms must find each other and collide at the exact same instant. It is a triple embrace, a cosmic coincidence that happens trillions of times every second within the heart of a dying sun. When these 3 helium atoms fuse, they create something entirely new, the element carbon. If hydrogen is the spark of the universe and helium is its steady pulse, then carbon is its architectural masterpiece. Carbon is the great connector, an element that loves to reach out and hold on to others, forming long, stable chains and complex rings. It is the most versatile builder in the cosmos, and it is being forged right now in the silent, pressurized depths of our ancestral stars. I want you to take a slow, gentle breath and think about the carbon that makes up your own body. As you lie there, perfectly still and supported by your bed, know that the very foundation of every cell in your being was once created in that celestial forge. The carbon in the soft tissue of your lungs, the carbon that forms the intricate double helix of your DNA, and the carbon that provides the structure for your skin and hair, all of it began as 3 tiny helium atoms finding one another in the dark, hot center of a distant red giant. You are, in a very literal sense, a collection of ancient starlight that has taken on a solid, living form. This carbon is the scaffolding of life. It is the reason why molecules can become complex enough to store information, to build hearts that beat and minds that dream. It is a sturdy, reliable element, a gift from a star that was nearing the end of its life, giving of itself so that something new might one day begin. Feel the quiet strength of those atoms within you, atoms that have existed for billions of years and have traveled across the vastness of space just to be a part of you tonight. But the star's work is not yet finished. Once the foundation of carbon is laid, the heat continues to rise, and the cosmic kitchen begins to prepare the next essential ingredients. As we move further up the periodic table, the complexity of the universe deepens. The star begins to layer its elements like the rings of an ancient tree, moving from carbon toward the very substances that will one day fill the atmosphere of a blue planet. We are moving toward the creation of oxygen and nitrogen, the elements that will turn a silent, rocky world into a place of wind, breath, and rustling leaves. The journey from the simplest hydrogen atom to the complexity of a breathing, dreaming human being is continuing, one steady, pressurized step at a time. Let the thought of this ancient, slow-motion creation wrap around you like a warm blanket as we move deeper into the story of the air that surrounds us and the life that sustains us. As the star continues its long, slow dance, the heat at its center becomes almost unimaginable, a focused and steady pressure. It is here that the next great gift of the cosmos is born, oxygen. While carbon provides the sturdy structure of our physical forms, oxygen provides the very spark of life. Every time you take a slow, deep breath, you are inviting a piece of an ancient star into your lungs. Take a moment now to feel that breath, a slow inhale and a soft, easy exhale. As you settle further into your pillows, let the weight of your body sink into the mattress and consider the air around you. The invisible gas that sustains every beat of your heart was once forged in the white-hot heart of a giant sun, millions of light years away and eons ago. In the core of that star, a carbon atom and a helium atom found one another. Under the immense weight of the star's own gravity, they merged, fusing into a single atom of oxygen. This process is a patient, steady transformation. It is the reason why the universe is not just a collection of cold rocks, but a place capable of hosting life. Without this stellar alchemy, there would be no wind to rustle the leaves, no blue oceans, and no gentle breath to carry you into sleep. The oxygen molecules currently moving through your bloodstream are tiny, ancient travelers. They were born in a fire so bright it could be seen across the void of space. And now they are here, in the quiet of this moment, providing the energy your body needs to rest and repair itself. There is a profound, beautiful connection between the life cycle of a distant sun and the rhythmic rise and fall of your chest. You are breathing in the history of the universe. You are part of a continuous, unbroken loop of matter that began at the dawn of time. As you drift closer to dreams, know that you are fueled by the same energy that lights the night sky. But the star's work is reaching a pinnacle. As it grows older, and hotter, it continues to build, layering heavier elements in its core like the rings of a great tree. Outside the core, hydrogen is still turning into helium. Deeper in, helium becomes carbon. Deeper still, carbon becomes oxygen, and oxygen becomes neon and silicon. It is a masterpiece of cosmic organization, a celestial factory working in silent, perfect harmony. However, every star, no matter how massive, eventually reaches a natural limit. As the fusion process continues, the star begins to create the heaviest element it can produce through this steady internal pressure: iron. Iron is a unique milestone. It is incredibly stable, a sturdy and unyielding element that marks the end of the star's ability to create energy. When the first atoms of iron begin to settle in the very center of the star, the delicate balance that has held the sun together for billions of years begins to change. The star, which has spent its life pushing outward with the light of its own creation, begins to feel the weight of its own success. The core becomes heavy and quiet, preparing for a final transformation that will eventually scatter these precious elements across the dark, waiting to become something new. In the heart of the star, iron begins to collect. It is a remarkable element, perhaps the most stable and sturdy in all of nature. In the language of physics, iron possesses the highest binding energy per nucleon, which simply means it is the most comfortable, balanced state an atom can reach. It is the quiet destination that all other elements have been traveling toward through the long process of stellar fusion. But for the star, this stability brings a profound change. Unlike the lighter elements that came before it, the hydrogen, the helium, and the carbon, iron is different. When those lighter atoms fuse together, they released a gentle, powerful warmth, the very light and heat that makes stars shine across the darkness. This outward pressure of light acted like a soft, invisible hand, pushing back against the immense weight of gravity and keeping the star perfectly round and stable for billions of years. But iron is the end of that energetic journey. To fuse iron atoms together would require more energy than the process gives back. Iron is the first element in the star's long life that refuses to pay its way in light. It is a cosmic dead end, a place where the fire of fusion finally begins to fade. As the iron core grows, the star's internal engine begins to slow down. The brilliant outward pushing force of light starts to flicker and dim at the very center. For eons, this sun has been a master of balance, a slow and steady dance between the inward pull of its own gravity and the outward push of its own creation. But now that balance is shifting. The core becomes dense, silent, and incredibly heavy. It is no longer a place of vibrant activity, but a place of gathering weight. Imagine the center of this massive star as a sphere of pure iron packed tighter than anything we can truly fathom. It is a solid, unyielding heart at the center of a giant, because it can no longer produce the heat needed to support the layers of gas above it. The star begins to feel the true staggering weight of its own existence. It becomes heavy and quiet, like a deep breath held for just a moment too long. This is the star's period of preparation. It has spent millions of years forging the building blocks of future worlds, and now it is reaching the limit of what it can do alone. The core is now an anchor, pulling at the very fabric of the star's structure. Without the constant outward pressure of new energy, the star begins to lean into its own gravity. It is a moment of profound cosmic stillness, a transition from the steady work of a lifetime to a final magnificent transformation. The star is not failing. It is simply preparing to share what it has made. The iron heart is a reservoir of all the stability the universe can offer. But to move forward, to create the gold in a wedding ring or the silver in a mirror, the star must undergo one final dramatic event. It is standing on the edge of a great release, a necessary step that will eventually scatter these precious, heavy atoms across the dark, waiting for the day they can become part of something new. In this quiet, heavy moment, the star is a bridge between the ancient past and the future of the cosmos. The star, having reached its limit, finally begins to surrender to the inevitable pull of its own gravity. In a moment of profound transformation, the outer layers of the star fall inward, crashing against that unyielding iron core with a force that is almost impossible to imagine. But in the quiet theater of our minds, we don't see this as a violent end. Instead, we see it as a grand, radiant release. This is the supernova, the star's magnificent way of recycling its life's work back into the vastness of the universe. It is a moment of spectacular generosity, where a single point of light expands to share everything it has created with the empty space around it. It is the universe's way of ensuring that nothing is ever truly lost, only repurposed and redistributed for the next great chapter of existence. In the incredible heat and pressure of this transition, the universe performs its final, most complex alchemy. For billions of years, the star could only forge elements as heavy as iron. But in the sudden, brilliant surge of a supernova, there is enough energy to push even further. In these few glowing seconds, the heaviest and rarest elements are born. This is the origin of the gold that we treasure for its luster, and the silver that reflects the world back to us. It is the birthplace of platinum, copper, and all the heavy metals that will one day form the foundations of technology and the treasures of civilizations. These elements are the star's parting gift, forged in a flash of light that can outshine an entire galaxy for a brief, beautiful time. Without this moment of release, these materials would remain locked away forever, hidden in the heart of a dying sun. Once the light begins to soften and the energy dissipates, the star is no longer a single burning orb. It has become something new, a vast, expanding cloud of stardust. The iron, the oxygen, the carbon, and the newly minted gold are all cast out into the deep velvet silence of space. They are no longer confined to the crushing heat of the core. They are free to travel. This stardust is fine and delicate, drifting through the dark like a glittering mist of potential. Each tiny particle is a messenger from the heart of a sun, carrying a history that spans millions of years. They are the building blocks of everything we have ever known, now scattered across the cosmic ocean. Imagine these microscopic grains of matter floating through the absolute stillness of the vacuum. They are incredibly cold now, cooled by the infinite reach of the cosmos, but they are not lost. They move with a quiet, patient grace, traveling across the light years as if they have all the time in the world. They are the seeds of the future, the raw materials for planets, moons, and eventually life itself. As they drift, they occasionally catch the distant light of other stars, shimmering softly in the dark. They are the wandering remnants of a life well lived, a silent legacy written in the language of atoms, waiting for the slow, gentle pull of gravity to one day gather them into a new story. They are the bridge between the ancient stars of the past and the living worlds of the future, floating peacefully in the eternal night, waiting for their next purpose to find them. As these vast clouds of stardust and ancient gas begin to gather, they form the most breathtaking structures in the known universe. The nebula. The word nebula is Latin for mist or cloud. And indeed, these are the celestial mists, where the story of the cosmos begins anew. Often spanning hundreds of light years, a nebula is a colossal glowing tapestry of hydrogen, helium, and the recycled dust of stars that came before. They are frequently called stellar nurseries, for it is within these deep, quiet cradles that the next generation of stars is born. They are the gardens of the galaxy, where the seeds of the past are replanted to grow into the wonders of the future. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself drifting slowly through one of these clouds. It isn't a thick, heavy fog, but a delicate, ethereal veil of light. The colors are soft and muted, deep violets, pale roses, and shimmering emerald greens illuminated from within by the faint glow of distant newborn suns. The silence here is absolute, a peaceful, heavy stillness that stretches out in every direction. As you drift, feel the lightness of your own being, as if you are as weightless as the microscopic grains of carbon and oxygen floating around you. Take a slow, deep breath and let the vastness of this nursery wrap around you like a warm, soft blanket. There is no rush here. In the heart of a nebula, time moves in the rhythm of millions of years, and the frantic pace of the world is a distant, forgotten dream. Even in this gentle, sprawling mist, an invisible force is at work. Gravity, the patient sculptor of the universe, begins to exert its influence. It is a very faint pull at first, almost imperceptible. A single grain of dust is attracted to another. A pocket of hydrogen gas becomes slightly denser than the space around it. Over unimaginable spans of time, these tiny imbalances grow. The clumping begins. What was once a uniform cloud starts to develop knots and ripples like the surface of a pond disturbed by a soft rain. These dense pockets are where the magic happens, where the gravity becomes strong enough to pull in more and more material from the surrounding mist. These clumps are the seeds of everything yet to come. As gravity pulls more and more material toward these centers of mass, they grow heavier and more powerful. The dust isn't just floating anymore. It is swirling, caught in a slow, majestic dance. This motion creates heat, a subtle warmth that begins to stir in the cold dark. The atoms are coming closer together, leaving behind the lonely reaches of deep space to join something larger. This is the transition from the scattered remnants of the past to the organized structures of the future. The stardust is no longer just debris. It is becoming the foundation of new worlds, gathering its strength in the quiet corners of the nursery, preparing to build a home for the stars and the planets that will one day circle them. It is a slow, beautiful process of homecoming where the universe gathers its pieces to begin again. Imagine, if you will, a specific corner of a vast shimmering nebula about 4.5 billion years ago. This wasn't a pristine empty space. It was a crowded graveyard and a bustling nursery all at once. Every single atom that makes up the sun, the planets, and even the very pillow beneath your head has a history that stretches back long before our solar system even existed. We often think of our world as a beginning, but in the grand timeline of the cosmos, it is a beautiful, recycled middle. Our solar system was built from the debris of stars that lived and died long before our sun ever drew its first breath of hydrogen. These ancestral stars, some of them massive and brilliant, spent millions of years forging the heavy elements we now depend on. When they eventually reached the end of their lives and cast their outer layers into the void, they left behind a rich, complex inheritance. There is a quiet, deep comfort in knowing that you are made of second-hand materials. These atoms, the carbon in your cells, the oxygen you're breathing so slowly and deeply right now, are not new. They are seasoned travelers, ancient and durable. They have lived many lives before they became part of you. They may have been part of a massive blue star that burned with a fierce white light, or perhaps they drifted in the cold, silent void for an eternity between galaxies. They are like heirlooms passed down through the generations of the universe. They have seen the birth of galaxies and the quiet fading of old suns. And now they have come together for a brief and precious time to form the world we know. You are a collection of cosmic artifacts held together by the gentle forces of nature, resting in the quiet of the night. As the great cloud of this recycled stardust began to sin and flatten into a vast swirling disk, gravity continued its patient, relentless work. In the center, a great ball of gas began to grow heavy and warm, eventually igniting to become our sun. But further out, in the cooler, swirling fringes of the disk, the heavier materials began to faint one another. These were the solid bits, the grains of rock, the flecks of metal, and the crystals of ice that had survived the heat of the stellar forge. These weren't violent collisions in the way we might imagine them. In the vastness of the disk, they were more like slow, inevitable unions. Tiny grains of dust stuck together, forming pebbles. Pebbles gathered into boulders, and over millions of years, these boulders drew together to form the great rocky spheres we call the terrestrial planets. Among these growing worlds was a small, glowing orb of molten rock, our Earth. It was being built layer by layer from the recycled remnants of those long-dead stars. It gathered the iron, the silicon, and the magnesium into a solid, sturdy foundation. This was the moment our home began to take shape, rising from the scattered dust of the cosmos. It was a process of homecoming, where the universe gathered its ancient pieces to create a place of stability and rest. As the earth grew, it began to settle, its heavy materials sinking toward the center to create a heart of solid metal, while the lighter rocks floated to the surface to form a cooling crust. The planet was preparing itself, slowly and surely, to become the stage for everything that was yet to come. Feel the weight of that history for a moment, the incredible journey those atoms took just to become the ground beneath you. You are resting upon a foundation of ancient starlight, a world built from the memories of the stars. As the young Earth continued to cool and settle, a remarkable sorting process took place deep within its layers. Imagine the planet as a giant, slow-moving cauldron where gravity acted as a gentle but firm hand, pulling the heaviest materials toward the center. Deep beneath your feet, thousands of miles down, lies the heart of our world, a vast, solid sphere of iron and nickel. This core is the anchor of our planet, a dense and heavy foundation that provides the stability we feel every day. These two elements, iron and nickel, were not created here on Earth. They were forged in the final, most intense moments of a giant star's life, millions of light years away and billions of years ago. When you think of the solid ground beneath your bed or the massive weight of the mountains, you are really thinking of ancient starlight that has taken a physical form. Iron is the final element a star can produce through fusion before it can no longer sustain itself. It is the end of the line for a star's creative power, making it one of the most sturdy and enduring substances in the universe. Because of this, the very center of our Earth is like a time capsule, holding the remnants of a celestial fire that burned long before our sun was even a whisper of gas in the dark. This iron core does more than just give the Earth its weight. As it spins slowly deep inside the planet, it creates a vast invisible shield around us, a magnetic field that wraps the Earth in a protective embrace. You can think of it as a silent, cosmic blanket, one that deflects the harsh winds of the sun and keeps our world safe and still. It is a comforting thought to know that even deep in the darkness of the Earth's interior, there is a force working constantly to maintain the peace and balance of our home. As we move upward from that heavy metallic core, we pass through the mantle, a thick layer of warm, slow-moving rock, and finally reach the crust, the thin, cool shell where we live. This crust is the stage for all of history, a patchwork of minerals and elements that have all traveled the same long road from the hearts of stars. Every stone you have ever held, every grain of sand on a beach, and every clod of earth in a garden is a piece of that original stardust, rearranged into the familiar shapes of our world. The ground is not just dirt and rock. It is a collection of cosmic artifacts, cooled and hardened into a place where life can finally rest. But a planet is more than just its solid parts. As the Earth continued to settle and the heavy metals found their home in the center, the planet began to change in another way. It began to breathe. Deep within the cooling rocks, gases that had been trapped since the beginning were being squeezed toward the surface. In a process as natural as a sigh, the Earth began to release these gases, slowly wrapping itself in a thin, delicate layer of air. This was the beginning of our atmosphere, a transition from the cold, hard geology of a new world to the soft, chemical cradle that would eventually allow life to flourish. The solid Earth was now ready to reach out and catch the wandering molecules of the sky, beginning a new chapter in the long, quiet history of everything. Take a slow, quiet breath now, and as you do, consider the air filling your lungs. While we often think of the oxygen that sustains us, the vast majority of the air you are breathing, nearly 4/5 of it, is actually nitrogen. Nitrogen is a calm and steady element. It is not prone to sudden changes or violent reactions. It simply exists as a gentle, invisible presence that makes up the bulk of our sky, like the iron deep within the earth or the carbon that forms the foundation of life. This nitrogen is another enduring gift from the stellar forge. It was synthesized in the hearts of stars that lived and died long before our sun was born, eventually settling here to create the atmosphere we depend on. This abundance of nitrogen performs a vital, quiet service for our planet. It provides the atmospheric pressure that acts like a soft, invisible weight pressing down on the surface of the earth. You can imagine it as a vast celestial blanket wrapping the world in a protective embrace. This pressure is essential for the world as we know it. Without this steady weight of the air, the earth would be a very different place. It is this specific pressure that allows water to exist in its liquid state, neither frozen solid by the cold of space, nor boiled away into a thin, wandering mist in the vacuum of the cosmos. Liquid water is a rarity, a precious treasure that requires just the right environment to survive. On Earth, the nitrogen in our air acts like a gentle hand, holding the water down and allowing it to gather into the vast rolling oceans, the quiet lakes, and the winding rivers that define our landscape. It is the reason our world is a vibrant shade of blue, a sanctuary where moisture can cling to the soil and fall softly from the clouds. This atmospheric pressure creates a stable stage, a place where the most important chemistry in the universe can finally begin to take place. As you settle deeper into your pillows, feel the stillness of the air around you. It is a comforting thought that the very sky is working to keep our world in balance, providing the perfect conditions for life to thrive. This leads us to the most remarkable substance on our planet, a molecule that is as simple as it is essential. It is a substance that every living thing shares, a bridge between the ancient past and the living present. This, of course, is water, the quiet, shimmering liquid that holds the secrets of the stars within its very structure. Water is a quiet miracle, a substance so common we often forget how extraordinary its journey has been. When you think of a single molecule of water, the familiar H2O, you are looking at a bridge that spans the entire history of the cosmos. It is a tiny, elegant masterpiece of cosmic architecture, built from pieces that come from two very different eras of our universe's story. The two hydrogen atoms in that molecule are the oldest things you will ever touch. They are the original survivors of the dawn of time, born in the first few minutes after the universe began, long before the first star ever shimmered in the dark. These atoms have drifted through the void for billions of years, unchanged and patient, carrying the very first energy of creation within them. The single oxygen atom, however, has a different story to tell. It was forged much later, not in the emptiness of space, but in the white-hot, crushing furnace of a massive star. It is the product of unimaginable pressure and heat, a gift from a sun that lived its life and then scattered its remains across the galaxy. When these two different travelers, the ancient hydrogen and the stellar oxygen, finally met, they formed a bond that is both gentle and incredibly strong. They clicked together to create a molecule that is uniquely suited for life. As you lie there, feeling the quiet rhythm of your own breath, take a moment to visualize a single, clear drop of water. Imagine it resting on the tip of a leaf or hanging suspended in a morning mist. It looks so simple, so still, and yet, within that one tiny shimmering sphere, there are more atoms than there are stars in the observable universe. Thousands of billions of ancient hydrogen atoms and stellar oxygen atoms are all huddled together, moving in a soft, liquid dance. This water is more than just a liquid. It is a traveler that has seen the birth of galaxies and the death of suns. It has been frozen in the hearts of comets, drifted as vapor through the clouds of young planets, and flowed through the deep, hidden currents of the earth. It is a substance that refuses to be still, always changing, always moving, and always supporting the world around it. It is a comforting thought to realize that the water you drink, the water that makes up the majority of your own body, is a collection of these ancient cosmic artifacts. You are, in a very literal sense, filled with the history of the universe. For billions of years, these atoms drifted and combined, waiting for the right conditions to settle. They waited for the earth to cool, for the atmosphere to thicken, and for the oceans to fill. Eventually, in the quiet, warm depths of those early seas, these molecules began to do something even more remarkable. They didn't just flow, they began to organize. They became the medium, the gentle solvent, in which the first sparks of life could begin to flicker. This ancient water provided the perfect environment for complex chemistry to turn into biology. It was the cradle that held the very first instructions for life, allowing atoms to weave themselves into the intricate, beautiful patterns that would one day become you. As you rest here in the quiet of this moment, consider the intricate map that exists within every cell of your body, your DNA. This elegant, spiraling ladder is the blueprint of who you are. Yet its rungs are built from the most ancient materials imaginable. Every carbon atom that forms the backbone of your genetic code, every nitrogen atom that helps bridge the gaps, and every phosphorus atom that holds the structure together was once a lonely traveler, drifting through the vast, silver-black silence of the interstellar vacuum. Before these atoms were part of a living being, they spent billions of years suspended in the cold, thin air of the cosmos. They floated in the great voids between the stars, moving so slowly and so peacefully that time itself seemed to stand still. They were part of those massive glowing nebulae we imagined earlier, drifting as microscopic specks of dust, waiting for the gentle pull of gravity to call them home to a new world. Think for a moment about the sturdy weight of your own body as it sinks into the mattress. The calcium that gives your bones their strength and structure was not simply found on Earth. It was forged in the final, brilliant moments of a massive star's life. That calcium was scattered across the darkness, traveling across light years of empty space before it finally settled into the cooling crust of our planet, eventually finding its way into the food you eat and finally into the very frame that supports you. Your bones are, quite literally, made of starlight that has been hardened by time. And as you feel the soft, steady beat of your heart, remember the iron that pulses through your veins. This iron is what allows your blood to carry life-giving oxygen to every corner of your body, from the tips of your toes to the quiet centers of your brain. This is the very same iron we spoke of earlier, the heavy, stable element that marks the final chapter of a giant star's life. Every red blood cell in your body contains a tiny metallic spark, that was birthed in a celestial furnace billions of miles away. You are a living archive of the universe's history. You are a collection of cosmic artifacts gathered together in a beautiful temporary harmony. This realization brings a profound sense of interconnectedness. You are not a stranger to the universe. You are part of it, woven from the same thread as the most distant galaxies. The atoms that make up your eyes, which have seen the world, and your hands, which have touched it, are the very same atoms that once danced in the hearts of suns and drifted through the freezing dark of the void. There is no separation between the world outside and the world within you. You are the universe, gathered up in a small, precious space, breathing and dreaming in the dark. Every breath you take is a quiet conversation with the past. You are inhaling oxygen forged in stars and exhaling carbon that may one day become part of a new forest or a different sea. There is a deep rhythmic balance to this exchange, a reminder that you are never truly alone. You are supported by a lineage of matter that spans the entirety of time. As you drift closer to sleep, let the weight of this connection settle over you like a warm, heavy blanket. You are made of sturdy, ancient things. You are built from the debris of giants, and you carry the quiet strength of the cosmos within every fiber of your being. The same forces that hold the planets in their orbits are the forces that hold you together now, keeping you safe and steady in the stillness of the night. Consider the profound permanence of the tiny pieces that make you, you. In the vast unfolding story of the cosmos, one of the most comforting truths is that atoms never truly disappear. They are the ultimate survivors, the eternal building blocks of reality. Since the very first moments of the universe's birth, the amount of matter has remained remarkably constant. The atoms that compose your body today are not new. They are ancient travelers that have simply been rearranged over billions of years to form the person resting here right now. They have been parts of mountains, parts of ancient ferns, parts of the deep, cold sea, and parts of creatures that walked the earth long before humans ever dreamt of the stars. There is a deep, quiet peace in knowing that you are made of borrowed stardust. The carbon, the nitrogen, the oxygen, these are all on a long, slow loan from the universe. You are a temporary vessel for these immortal particles, a brief and beautiful gathering of elements that have seen the beginning of time and will likely see its end. This cycle of rearrangement is the heartbeat of existence. It is a slow, rhythmic dance that ensures nothing is ever truly lost. Every atom you are using in this moment to blink, to breathe, to dream, will one day continue its journey. When your time with these atoms is eventually complete, many millions of years from now, they will return to the earth. They might find themselves held in the roots of a great oak tree or dissolved in the salt of a crashing wave. They may even, in the far distant future, when our sun has lived its full life, be cast back out into the velvet blackness of space. They will drift once more through the nebula, perhaps becoming part of a new star, a new planet, or a new consciousness in a corner of the galaxy we cannot yet imagine. You are a part of a cycle that is as large as the universe itself, a process that is patient, steady, and infinitely gentle. But for now, those atoms have found a home in you. They are here to support you, to give you form, and to allow you to experience the world. Bring your awareness back to the room where you are lying. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress, the collective weight of trillions of ancient sturdy atoms resting in perfect alignment. They are not rushing. They have all the time in the universe. There is no need for you to hurry either. The journey of these atoms has brought them to this specific moment of stillness, this quiet pocket of time where you can simply be. Let your breath slow down even further, matching the patient pace of the elements. As you inhale, imagine you are welcoming back a tiny piece of the world. As you exhale, you are letting go, trusting in the cycle that has sustained life for eons. The atoms in your pillow, the atoms in your blanket, and the atoms in your own skin are all part of the same silent, shimmering fabric. You are woven into the very structure of the night. There is a profound safety in this belonging. You are not an island. You are the continuation of a story that began in the dark and will continue long after the lights go out. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. You are here, you are whole, and you are supported by the timeless endurance of the stars. You are at rest, held by the very matter that built the world. When we look back across the vast timeline we've traveled tonight, the story is truly remarkable. We began in a state of quiet potential, a silent field of energy before time even had a name. We watched as that potential expanded into a hot, brilliant light, and then cooled into the very first particles of matter. We saw those particles find one another, guided by forces that have never wavered. We followed the path of the first hydrogen atoms through the long, dark ages, waiting for gravity to do its patient work. We stood by as the first stars ignited, breaking the darkness and beginning the long, slow process of creation. Every element that makes up your world, the iron in your blood, the oxygen in your lungs, the carbon in your very DNA, was crafted with care in the hearts of those ancient suns and scattered across the void in beautiful, shimmering explosions. It is a journey of billions of years, and it has all led here to this quiet room and this moment of absolute peace. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air, forged in the heart of a dying sun. Fill your lungs. Feel the weight of your body now. It is a heavy, comfortable weight. Your bones, rich with calcium from ancient starlight, are being pulled gently toward the center of the earth by the same gravity that holds the galaxies together. You are perfectly supported. Every cell in your body is a masterpiece of cosmic history, a collection of particles that have traveled across the vastness of time just to be here, resting with you tonight. There is no need to do anything more. There is no need to think or plan. You are simply a part of the grand, slow rhythm of the universe. The atoms that compose your hands, your heart, and your mind are the very same atoms that once drifted in the great nebula. They have been recycled, reshaped, and refined over eons, and now they have come together to form you. There is a beautiful thought to carry with you into your dreams. You are not just a person living in the universe. You are the universe itself, waking up for a brief, wonderful moment to experience its own beauty. You are the way the cosmos looks back at itself and wonders. You are the eyes, the heart, and the mind of the stars. And now, as the day fades and the world grows quiet, the universe is ready to rest. It is closing its eyes through you, returning to that state of peaceful potential from which it first emerged. Let the silence of the space between the stars fill your mind. Let the darkness be a soft, warm blanket that tucks you in. You are safe. You are home. You are exactly where you belong in the infinite tapestry of existence. The journey is complete for now, and the stars will keep watch while you sleep. Everything is balanced. Everything is still as you drift off. Remember that you are made of stardust, and to the stars you are always connected. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Good night.